Hello, my name is Chris Reisner, and welcome to Adding Authentication to an iOS mobile service application. With mobile services, you've got access to a number of different providers for authentication, including Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Twitter accounts. And it's very, very simple to add this authentication into a mobile service using application. Today, we're specifically going to look at adding Twitter authentication into our application. So let's start by creating a new mobile service. And before we can do that, though, let's actually log into the Windows Azure portal. We're going to go to manage.windowsazure.com, and then I'm going to enter my credentials. So the Windows Azure portal is going to load, and we'll then create a new mobile service. So we'll go to mobile services. We don't have any yet, so we'll go to create a new one. We're going to call this iOS Auth Demo. And we're going to choose to create a new SQL database. If we had an existing one, we could also choose to use it. And then we're going to choose the region, which we'll leave as East US. Now, it's very important that you want your region for your mobile service and your database to be in the same place, because you don't want your mobile service to have to hop across to a different data center just to talk to its database. Now, I'm fine with the default name for our database, so that's fine. Now, I could choose to create a new SQL database server, which is when I would get asked to create my admin credentials and then choose the region. I've already got a server in the East US region, so I'm going to go ahead and use this one and enter the credentials I created when I created the server. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and it'll take a few seconds, but our mobile service should spin up. Alright, our mobile service is ready to use. Let's go ahead and click on it. So the first thing we get is the quick start screen, where we can choose the platform. We're of course going to be doing iOS development, and then we can choose whether or not we want to create a new iOS app or connect an existing iOS app. We're going to create a new iOS app today just to use the quick start experience. And to do so, we're going to create a to-do item table, which we can do very quickly through this. And then lastly, we'll download our application. So we'll go ahead and save that. And we'll unzip it. And I'll close that. And then we're going to go ahead and open it. We'll open our project. Now, the quick start application is a simple to-do list. I can add items, I can mark them complete, and I can, if I restart my application, it's going to pull down all of the items that are there. So let's go ahead and run this and just add a few items just that we can have that done. Oh, let's close that and let's actually run we're going to run the iPhone simulator, so it's a little easier to see on the screen. So we're going to save some data. We're going to test auth. And we're going to take a nap. Now I can save some data and then I can mark it complete. And if we go over to the server and we go to the data tab, we'll see that we've got 3 records and the data is saved and the one mark is marked complete. This is great. But what if I wanted to have permissions around my data? Like, I don't want anybody just to be able to access the data. I want to actually have some authentication process. So using authentication in mobile services, we can do that. The first thing we're going to do is change the permission on the table. The default permission is anybody with the application key. So when you create a mobile service client inside of our code, we pass in the application key, which is available in the dashboard of mobile services. When we do that, every request to mobile services will end up including the application key as a header. So when you make an insert operation against the to-do item table, as long as it has anybody with the application key, it's going to say, is the header there? Yes? All right, go ahead and proceed with the request. So I'm going to change that to say only authenticated users on all of the operations. So we'll save those changes, and now we'll go ahead and try and save another item. And what's going to happen is our application is actually going to crash, which is good because the sample app isn't designed to handle the authentication errors for you. It's up to you as the application developer to decide what should happen if I catch an error. But if we actually look in here, we'll see that we got back an unauthorized error because we didn't send over a user, and it said, I need a user, so you're unauthorized. Let's look at fixing that now. So what we're going to do is we'll go back here in the portal, and we'll go to the Identity tab. Inside here, this is where you put the settings for any of the providers you want to be able to authenticate through your application. So today we're going to add Twitter, which means we need to get a consumer key and a consumer secret. To do so, we're going to go to dev.twitter.com, and first we'll sign in. So I'm going to use build Chris. And I've logged in, and now that I've logged in, I can go to My Applications. Now, when I create an application, I actually need a little bit of information from my mobile service. Specifically, I need the URL. So we'll go to the dashboard in the portal, And on the right hand side, we see that we have the mobile service URL. So we'll copy that. So we'll go back to Twitter, and we're going to say we're going to create a new application. So we're going to call this iOS auth demo, and this is a demo of auth in iOS. And for website and callback URL, we need to put our mobile service URL. The reason that that's necessary is that when you do authentication with Twitter or Google or Microsoft or Facebook, your application will call into their website and present the user with an authentication screen, and afterwards their system will basically call back to your application. So you have to have some way of their site talking to your application, and mobile services is going to spin that up for us. We just need to put the URL in place. So then we'll go down here and we'll say we agree, and we're going to attempt to enter a CAPTCHA. And we got it. Perfect. So now down here we see we have a consumer key and a consumer secret. Now when we use these, Twitter's going to identify these and say, this is the application I created and it's connected to that URL. So we're going to copy the consumer key and go back to identity. And in Twitter, we're going to paste that. And then we'll copy the consumer secret. And we'll paste in the consumer secret. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now, when I made those changes, what basically happened was the mobile service span up something in the back end so that we can do authentication. So if we copy the URL again, and we go to login/Twitter, what we should see is that we'll be redirected to a Twitter login page. This is basically what our mobile application is going to use to authenticate. It's just going to look a little better, and it's going to be on our mobile device. So let's go ahead and close that. And now we're actually going to return to our application. So returning to our application, let's go ahead and look at some of the code for a second. If we go into to-do list controller, when the viewDidLoad method is called, we do some initialization, and then last we call the refresh data on success. That means that we're going to our mobile service, and right then we're saying, give me all the data. Unfortunately, at this point, we haven't authenticated, so when we do that, we would get an unauthorized error. So we're going to get rid of this because we don't want it to happen here. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to add a new method called viewDidAppear, which is one of the lifecycle methods on a view controller. And then inside of there, we're going to say check my to-do services.client.current user property. If it's nil, that means we haven't authenticated yet. And provided it's nil, that's when we're actually going to call an authentication method, which we'll create in just a second. Now I need to remove a couple parentheses in here for that to be right. Okay, but that should be good. Now we actually need to add our login method. Now, mobile services is very handy in that it creates pretty much everything you need to handle the authentication. So instead of you having to wrap the web view that mobile services creates in the back end, there's a web view already created for you. You just need to basically instantiate and use it. So we call the login view controller with provider, and we pass in the provider we want to use, which is Twitter. And then in the completion block, we're going to say, if there was an error, we're just going to say, we just want to log it here. Otherwise, we presume that they've logged in and it's successful. So we're going to call that refresh data on success method again. And for our completion handler, or rather in our completion block, we're just going to say self.table reload data. I'm sorry, self.table view reload data. Great. Now, the last thing we need to do once a response is returned is we actually need to dismiss the login view controller. So once we've coded that block, we actually need to present our view controller to the user. So now we should be able to run, and we should be able to actually authenticate our user. Great, so we have a Twinrotor login page, so let's go down here, and I'll log in with my account. Great, now I get those items again, so authentication is working. However, let's look at what happens if, instead of actually logging in like we would expect the user to, what happens if they actually cancel that authentication? So to check that, let's go ahead and kill our application, and we'll rerun it. So if I cancel out of this, you'll notice that it just popped up again. So if I do it again, it's just going to pop up again. The reason this is happening is that in that viewDidAppear method, we're checking to see if the current user is equal to nil. Now, when our web view controller, the one that actually has the login page, goes away, viewDidAppear is called again. So even though we dismissed the web view controller, and that's basically what ends up causing viewDidAppear, viewDidAppear is fired. It says current user is nil. I'm going to tell you to log in again. So if we actually wanted to handle, preventing them from having to log in again. So for example, you have a page at the beginning, and you say which provider do you want to log in with. You pick one, and it shows you the login page. Maybe you don't want to keep showing them the login provider. Maybe you want to show them different selections. Well, let's look at handling that now. So let's go up here, do what to this controller's properties, and let's add a new one. So we're going to add a didCancelLogin method, or I'm sorry, property or boolean, and then in here, in the viewDidLoad, we're just going to say didCancelLogin equals no. Now, in viewDidAppear, we're going to say, as long as the current user is nil and didCancelLogin is not true. And then the last thing we need to do is inside here, whenever we log that error, because we get an error back whenever they cancel it, we're going to say didCancelLogin equals yes. So now if we build and run our application, we'll see that now, if they hit cancel, we won't actually keep prompting them to log in. So that's it for adding simple authentication into your application. In future videos, we'll look at some more enhanced features, such as connecting users to the data they get saved, so that instead of everybody having access to the same to-do list here, everybody have their own to-do list. So we'll look at that in future videos. Thank you.